सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
Colourful mural hung over the table where the fate of the world was being decided. Leading his barefoot soldiers through the gorges and jungles of Guizhou, Commander Xiao Ke urged his troops to victory in the long march which culminated in the triumph of the Red Army. Energized by the image, perhaps, aging Prime Minister Zhou Enlai gave a very detailed and precise rendition of the military maneuvers, describing the battle with great vigor and arm movements. We hope we have no necessity of facing you in battle after hearing that description, United States President Richard Nixon politely responded. Taiwan is the critical issue, Zhu had warned during secret talks the previous year, building up to the summit meeting in 1972. Taiwan must be regarded as a part of China. Taiwan is a province of China. 5 days after Nixon and Zhu met under the mural at the elegant presidential palace in Beijing, once the favorite fishing spot of the Emperor Shangzong, their countries signed what has come to be known as the Shanghai Communique. The United States conceded China's demands to end its military presence in Taiwan and accepted that Taiwan is a part of China. All America hoped for was a peaceful settlement of the Taiwan question. At the G20 summit in Bali, Indonesia earlier this week, Presidents Joe Biden and Xi Jinping met face to face for the first time after taking office as leaders of their countries. The two presidents hope to manage a dangerous escalation of tensions over what else? Taiwan. Even as the People's Liberation Army simulated a military blockade of the island nation with combat jets intruding across the so-called median line dividing China and Taiwan, the Congress of the Communist Party asserted that the wheels of history are rolling on towards China's reunification. Admiral Michael Gilday, the chief of US naval operations, has warned that Beijing could be preparing to attack the island as early as next year. Facing economic stagnation, demographic decline, and the bite of technology sanctions, Xi knows he must act soon to seize Taiwan, or China could lose the opportunity forever. Xi's aggressive posturing on Taiwan, it's also possible, was intended to intimidate Asian neighbors in the hope America was too mired in the war in Ukraine to risk involvement in an Asian crisis. Xi's real intentions, of course, are known to no one but himself, but he might also have gambled that Biden would be weakened by midterm elections. That would have led American policymakers to turn inward and avoid a crisis that could hurt America's economy. For its part, the People's Republic also has excellent reasons to avoid actual war over Taiwan. For one, a conflict would be extremely costly. Taiwan is a major investor in China and an even more important market. A war, moreover, would sever China's vital trade links to countries like Japan and South Korea. And even if these economic shocks could be absorbed, there's no guarantee of Chinese victory. Taiwan is militarily prepared to inflict severe losses on an invading force. Who knows how that would end? Even then, agreement on Taiwan is likely to prove elusive, involving as it does issues of ideology and regional influence that go to the heart of Chinese power. In his meeting with Xi this week, Biden underlined China's coercive and increasingly aggressive actions towards Taiwan, which undermine peace and stability across the Taiwan Straits and in the broader region. But Xi, in turn, called Taiwan the first red line that must not be crossed. Like his predecessors, the real question Xi is probably asking himself is, exactly where does America's red line on Taiwan lie? Leading up to his election in 1969, President Nixon had written an article in the influential journal Foreign Affairs laying out the foundations of his radical China policy. Ever since the revolution of 1949, the United States had denied recognition to Communist China, seeing it as a threat to its interests in Asia. But Nixon believed this could not abide. The world cannot be safe until China changes, Nixon argued. Thus, our aim, to the extent that we can influence events, should be to induce change. The way to do this is to persuade China that it must change. For President Nixon, the stakes were high. China appeared to hold the keys to a face-saving American exit from Vietnam and the potential to become a key ally in the Cold War against the Soviet Union. To do this, declassified documents tell us, Nixon was willing to offer a security guarantee to China against the Soviet Union. Even at the same time, the People's Liberation Army was battling American troops in Vietnam. Nixon pulled the US Navy out of the Taiwan Straits and committed to the progressive withdrawal of forces stationed on the island under the US-Taiwan Mutual Defense Treaty of 1954. For the US, this was a fundamental shift in posture. Ever since 1950, following the invasion of South Korea, US forces had repeatedly asserted their military presence in the Taiwan Straits, signaling willingness to use military force to deter invasion. The PLA tested US commitment to Taiwan more than once. In 1954, it launched a series of raids on Taiwan's offshore islands. Later the year, the PLA occupied islands in the Daichen chain. The US responded by sending in 7 aircraft carriers at the head of a fleet. The showdown led President Dwight Eisenhower to sign the Mutual Defense Treaty with Taiwan. Fear of war led China to end its shelling. But again in 1958, the PLA shelled the islands of Kinmen and Matsu. This time, the US sent in a fleet with 4 aircraft carriers armed with atomic weapons. The Soviet Union, fearful the crisis could erupt into a major, even apocalyptic war, forced China to back down. Following Nixon's détente with China, though, the Taiwan-US Mutual Defense Treaty came to an end. The Taiwan Relations Act now commits the US to make available to Taiwan such defense articles and defense services in such quantity as may be necessary to enable Taiwan to maintain a sufficient self-defense capability. Through the 1980s, scholar Chas Freeman has noted, the American gamble seemed to pay off. China even pulled back offensive military positions across the Taiwan Straits. Trade boomed, and in 1993, envoys from the two countries even held talks in Singapore, though with a little deniability at the highest official level. Tensions, however, soon resurfaced. When Taiwan President Lee Teng-hui announced plans to hold the country's first free and fair elections in 1995, the PLA fired rockets into waters north of the country and moved troops into invasion staging areas. The US responded by moving 2 carrier battle groups into waters near Taiwan. The elections went ahead. In his last years, Nixon developed doubts about the détente he had engineered, as post-Tiananmen Square China seemed to be lurching deeper into authoritarianism. The rise of Xi and China's increasingly aggressive postures on its peripheries across China cemented those worries across a broad spectrum of American strategic opinion. To some in China, though, America's commitment still seems paper thin. As regards the Americans, North Korean dictator Kim Il-sung was told by the Chinese leader Mao Zedong in 1950, on the eve of the invasion of the South, "There is no reason to be afraid of them. The Americans will not enter a third world war for such a small territory." For his 2 years in office, President Biden has sought to prove that that prophecy is wrong. Taiwan makes their own judgments about their independence, he said just in September. That's their decision. This remark, a dramatic reversal of the deal hammered out at the presidential palace in Beijing so many decades ago, startled many observers. Biden, though, has concluded strategic competition with China simply cannot be averted, and he means to make sure America wins. Xi's backed down for now, but a long grinding contestation almost certainly lies ahead. I'm Praveen Swami and I'm National Security Editor of ThePrint. Thank you for listening to Security Code.